Okay.
Tommy, did I answer your question?
No, I don't remember.
Your question is, so is Cynthia winning the Equal Rights Amendment? And I would say if that's what it takes to get us where, what I want is a free, just, and equal society. But if it takes, you know, enabling the Equal Rights Amendment to get there, then it is what it is. No, I don't support it personally, but if that's the step that needs to be taken, then let's take the freaking step.
So I do have some thoughts. If you guys, unless you guys were gonna continue, just don't want to be interrupting.
Well, I guess I'll quickly say then, so sorry, is that I do support Cynthia's idea, since I understand that she wants the Equal Rights Amendment. I don't believe there's equality in this country, which is what Sherwin, wasn't sure where it was lacking. Equality in this, is it the U.S., right, Sherwin, you was talking about? You're talking about the U.S., you don't see where it's lacking?
Yeah, not totally sure if there's a difference in, I know, like, obviously there's difference in Bill of Rights and Constitution. I'm in Canada, obviously, but I just am not sure whether society has advanced to a certain point where people are living and institutions are making the policies that are sufficiently fair. And that's what, Tommy, maybe you can further that topic, that where exactly is it not fair, and we, like, that we actually need legislation to help with.
Well, real quick before Cynthia says something, if that's okay. I believe it's pretty transparent. You know what I mean? This world's full of narcissistic kind of superiority, men who don't see women as equal to them, and then the women feel lesser of value. Even if we say they have equal pay or equal this or equal that, they still have this undermining, perception, what I mean, of a woman, and that's all across many cultures. So that's right. That's this, to make it really simple and just not saying too much. I believe that's obvious.
Yeah.
Stacy, I didn't put hand up in the chat. Do you want me to go, or did you want to go? The crazy thing is this isn't even exactly where I expected the conversation to go. Like I kind of wanted to know what you guys saw as a free and because there's been a lot of talk about equality lately, and I was curious to know what alternate perceptions of what equality really looks like would be for you all. Stacy had her hand up, and then Cezary.
I just wanted to comment on Tommy's saying that there are women who are feeling oppressed by the attitudes of men. And while I totally feel that, I also feel like it's absolutely up to the women to not feel that way and say, that's BS. And it has to come from the women themselves, rather than saying, you guys, you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, you can legislate that, you can make it the law, but until women feel comfortable taking back their power, I don't know that it can really happen.
So one of the things that Milton Friedman, one of my favorite economists, well, actually, I'd say he's probably is my favorite economist, but also one of my favorite people and thinkers. One of my favorite philosophers, you could say, Milton Friedman. I think this is his original saying. He says, a society that strives for equality over freedom will have neither, and a society that strives for freedom over equality will have a good measure of both. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because men and women are not the same, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that they should be treated unjustly. And so, like, for example, because equality can be a complicated thing. Like, if you have somebody who goes to college and learns how to do a certain profession, I don't know, let's say a doctor or something. Actually, doctors I don't think they even make that much money, but I don't know, they study to be a lawyer, and then so they make a lot of money per hour, and then somebody else who doesn't go to college, they don't invest in themselves, or simply just, or maybe they didn't even invest in themselves. So, like, okay, you could take, I don't know, two electricians, for example. One electrician works 60 hours a week, and the other electrician works 40 hours a week. Well, one of them is going to have a lot more money than, like 50% more money than the other one. Well, they're not equal because one of them has more money than the other one. But that's because the other one has some kind of a different advantage. They have more free time to do other things. So if you want equality, so what, are they both supposed to make the same amount? Well, one of them is actually spending a lot more of their time in order to have more money. So I think we have to be really careful with trying to make people equal, because when you try to force people to be equal, you end up actually taking away their freedom, and you end up making people not equal. So that's got to be, we have to be really careful with that. And again, and some people have certain needs that other people don't, and so we have certain laws, maybe like maternal leave. And I think this was this idea, or this circumstance, I brought this up before. After a woman gives birth, the woman and the child are still like two symbiotic organisms that really need one another in developing that relationship. The men don't have that same need, nowhere near as much as a woman. So to give equal rights to custody for men over women, it would actually be unfair. It would be damaging both to the child and to the woman. But that's at early stages of development. So obviously it's complicated, but I don't know what else. I think that's what I wanted to say is so we have to, I think we have to keep in mind freedom when we talk about equality. We also have to the economics of it, the different circumstances, that people are not the same. So trying to achieve blanket equality isn't necessarily going to give us real equality. All right, I yield the floor.
So I think there's a difference between what legislation can do to create equality versus how we treat each other. Like, for example, the whole Black Lives Matter movement is because obviously there is a additional danger to in the eyes of the average policeman, to additional danger to Black people. So, and there have been laws that specifically deals with punishment or oversight of policemen, but that's generic again, like that any policeman who abuses their power and has a history of violence were being more addressed. And those laws were, by the way, diminished during the Trump administration. So there were things done to address the oversight for police forces. So again, I think there's nothing we could do with how, other than culturally and gradual changing an attitude for racist or sexist or whatever other behaviors. that does improve over time, as long as we behave in a well to each other. But I don't think, again, like legislation, you know, for example, what was it? What's a law that requires certain number of races to be in government organizations? I guess you know, and universities. So that kind of reverse discrimination, and I think that would definitely be overdoing it. So I just don't think legislation is something that you want to use to deal with these kinds of issues.
Ramses, you're up next.
Yeah, sure. So, honestly speaking, guys, I'm still young, so I don't have experience with this, but I can talk from my experience. Like, I have seen my mother breastfeeding my sister. I have seen my brother's wife breastfeeding her kid. I really believe that it shouldn't be just a maternal leave. It should be a maternal and paternal leave. So in my opinion, it is not just about breastfeeding. It's a lot more than that. And to get like to put the whole responsibility on the shoulders of a woman is unfair. If the woman is married and her husband is there and he can take care of the child, then both of them need to help each other, you know, until they are ready to go back to work. I wouldn't leave a woman with her kid, you know, like from 9 to 5. That really affects her psychology and her psychological health very badly. Can you imagine how many women have depression after they give birth? So the depression before giving birth itself is enough. Like we need to cut that. That's why here, Cezary, I think that equally to talk about a system that really respects everybody and gives equal right to all people. If someone gives birth, whether they are a man or they are a woman, and if I'm gonna give or if I'm gonna make a law to give like a leave for people, then I would give it to both parents. And one last thing, by the way, Sherwin, West Coast time at your place. I was actually in Vancouver last week. You guys are so lucky, you know, like 6 or 8 degrees, and people are wearing very heavy stuff. You need to visit Montreal someday.
Well, I'm from Toronto. I've lived there 30 years.
Oh, yeah, here you go. So you are a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran away from from that freezing weather. so and ended up out Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Sherwin. I see that you have to leave, but thank you so much for being here. And I'll remind everybody, we're going to have a presentation tomorrow in the regular Citizen Assembly that has to do with repurposing unused and underused properties. We have both a government plan and an auctions plan. You might be interested in finding out about that tomorrow night, Wednesday, starting 7 p.m. And then I wanted to comment, we're talking, Ramses, you were talking about both parents getting time off from work. And I would say the idea of just 2 parents or even 1 parent raising a child, it takes a village, and we need to get back to that. I think that there's more to address than just whether the man or the woman would take care of the child or both. We need more help than that. And I often wonder how to address the feelings that are so strong that drive people to say things need to be equal, they're not equal. And you had a great example of somebody works overtime, works really a lot harder and makes more money, but there is the impression that that person having more is not equal. So I don't have an answer to that right now. And I see regularly we talk about education and just people becoming better people and that type of thing, just evolving as human beings will hopefully take us to a better place. That's what I'm thinking now. Hisham, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know if this speaks to the point or not regarding equality, justice, but a couple of days ago, I think I heard Govern uh, Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about equality, and he said, um, for equality, it's about having everyone start from the same point, but not necessarily having the same end result. So, like Cezary's example, when he said there are two electricians, someone was, was working longer hours, logically he would make more money. So, um, in terms of equality, I think as a society, we just need to make sure to even the playing field at the start and not worry about the end result. The end result can vary for random reasons beyond our control. That's my point.
Cezary, are you next?
And you know what? So this makes me think. This has been brewing in my mind for a while, but with what Hisham says, I think the goal is not really equality, because equality is really complicated and it's actually chaotic, and you could say impossible to actually determine. I mean, there are some places in a way, some ways in which you can determine equality. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something specific, uh, where you have an equal right to apply for some kind of an, or I don't know. Let's say you have, let's say you have an entitlement program or something like that, where mothers get like some kind of a benefit from the government, some kind, I don't know, child care from the government, and so a black mother or a white mother, they're equally entitled to that program, and if they both apply, they both have the same chances of getting it. So in specific situations, when you control for other variables, you can achieve equality, but overall, around society, it's just too complicated of a system. But that's okay, because equality is not really what we care about. I think what we care about is empowerment.
Just
We well, justice, but that justice comes from empowerment. And so even if people don't have the same incomes, they don't have the same intelligence, they don't have the same looks, but at the same time that nobody is feeling disenfranchised, nobody is feeling that their voice doesn't matter. So it's really empowerment. I think that's what we're after. And that's a much simpler way to, that's a much simpler goal. And I think it's a much more realistic goal. And again, because this really relates to that concept of freedom, but not just freedom to do things, but also having the means to actually do those things, which again, for me, comes back to the idea of the universal basic income, because then people have the freedom, because Ramses brought up the point about, parental leave. Well, but okay, so parental leave, but does that mean that parental leave from what? From a private employer? Does that mean you're taking away the freedom of the employer to fire you because they don't actually want to deal with your BS or whatever? That's fine. Well, I think the employer should be able to let you go. You want to go stay at home with your kids for 2 months, 6 months, I don't know, 2 years, 6 years, go ahead and do it. But we just don't want to deal with that. But it's okay, as long as you're not going to starve and you have a way to actually live decent life, then, well, that's where the universal basic income comes in. So as long as you have that empowerment, you don't really need equality, as long as you have everyone is equally empowered to survive, to take care of their needs, to, you know, to work towards their dreams and so on. So anyways, that's my point. And I think so one of the concerns is that with an equal rights amendment, that amendment would actually remove a lot of the laws that are not equal but are intended to empower those who need to be empowered. So I think that's the concern. Yeah, I yield the floor.
Ramses, you have your hand up?
Sure, Cynthia. Sure, Stacy. Sorry. Regarding UBI, yeah. So if we assume that I agree with UBI, I think in general, the employer is employing humans, right? Not donkeys, or not machines. We are humans. That's why there are laws. For example, when you have medical situation, you will have to, your employer will have to appreciate that. I remember once in Vancouver, it was the start of the working day, and it was my first time to have work in snow. It was the first time to snow, and I was just new to Canada. And I had some shoes from Egypt that didn't work, for snow. It was for desert, actually. So I was running in the street to catch the bus, and suddenly I fell back on, I fell on my back. And as a nurse at the hospital told me, you fell down in your arse? Okay, yeah, you will get that a lot here in Canada. So I got a paper from the hospital, and I went to my employer, and they gave them this paper, and I simply went back home. I didn't work, but I am getting my pay for that day. So the same situation here applies for the woman who is breastfeeding, and I believe should apply for the man as well, because this newly born baby is not just the baby of the woman, it is the result of both of them having sex, right? And they are responsible for him. In my opinion, whether this is gonna be paid or not paid, it makes sense to apply equality here in this situation. And I'm just taking this as an example. There are many other examples where all genders should be equal in such matters.
I just want to say that this is one of those instances where I think it's good for our culture to treat that equally. I mean, potentially, if an employer has a female, I don't know, maybe it just so happens that a lot of their employees have children. It just so happens, like this time of the whatever, just by coincidence, and they're like, well, we need a certain number of employees here, like, and so if the employer was to give preferential treatment to their female employees, or well, the mothers over, and if they had to make a decision, which employees do they staff more with, then I think it would make sense that they give preference to to the women, to give them the time off as opposed to the fathers. And the fathers would probably be okay. Men tend to be quite understanding in those situations. They would be like, you know what, I know you need a staff. We're here working on this together. I'm happy working for this company. I want to benefit this company as well. And so the men would be understanding that. I think society would be understanding that more time would be giving off to women. But at the same time, if the company can't afford it, then they should be giving. Then they shouldn't look at a father strangely because they're putting in parental leave. Like, that makes total sense. That, hey, I just have a new child and I want to spend time with them. So I'd say that there should be equality, but maybe in certain dire situations, there should be preferential treatment. To me, that makes sense. Now, and again, as long as the people are free to say, well, you know what, if you're not going to give me this time off, this is important enough to me that I'm just, you know what, I quit. I'm just going to find another job after I'm done. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, is empowerment. And the best way to actually reach equality is through empowerment, because then people can negotiate for their own equality, for what they think is fair. Anyways, I yield the floor.
Okay, I wanted to talk, it just seems when we talk about all these things that the real solution is cultural shift, the way we think about things. And then when you're talking about, well, who should be working, and the company needs to have workers, but somebody needs to be home for the kids. I mean, what is our goal here? What is the company's goal? Is the company's goal only money, or shouldn't everybody's goal be holistic well-being and holistic health, which starts with their children? And I think if you can just get us to vote for those companies who will support a healthy family as well as their bottom line, then we won't have these detailed discussions about, well, should it be the man or the woman? We're all like, hey, it's about a healthy family, and business understands that, and they're willing to make some changes in that way. And they should have a great advantage in their workforce if they've got a happy workforce that doesn't have to worry about who's going to take care of the kids. And that's something the Army learned. Their men can't go out there and kill people if they're worried about their kids. And so the Army has created some pretty good child care policies for taking care of their warriors when they're off to war. And I think that should be expanded.
If I may speak, was anybody first? Because I'm reading the chat, and I agree with Tommy. He says man absence in family is the issue with this country, and that's because for some reason we perceive them as being expendable, as not necessary, as not needed, and I would say nothing could be further from the truth. Men are far more important to our society than cannon catchers, because that's essentially what they do. They go into war and catch bullets. And I really think that we're doing the men of this country a great disservice. And I would say it all starts with John Locke, but that's just my personal opinion. So that's also kind of my goal, to alter perception, to actually see that we should all be treating each other special, because we are all important. We are all here together here, and only we can make this place better if we actually recognize that we really are here together, and that no one is expendable. No one, just because you can lift something heavier than me does not make it so that you have to go into a war zone, because it just doesn't make sense to me. But I actually had a lot of driving factors on this thing I wrote, so my apologies if it seemed to get a little scattered.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I really, really enjoyed your comments there. Thank you very, very much. Ramses, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree with Cynthia for sure, and Tommy. And I would say maybe the reason why people perceive men as expendable may be because of the traditional perception of the roles of man and woman. Like man is the one who works and gets the money. Woman is the one who bears children and breastfeeds them, and takes them to school and studies for them, etc. Of course, now in 2021, we are progressive enough, of course, to get rid of all these traditional conceptions. And I really appreciate Texas in many ways, not just this. And that's why, to me, I'd rather work in Texas than California, although California seems to be blue and Texas seems to be red, but this tells you something.
Thank you very much. Well, if nobody else has their hand up, I wanted to talk about that, men being expendable. And do any of you men here have a comment about, do you feel expendable? Do you feel like that's a bad rap? Do you think that that's a thing?
Before, could you define that more of what that means to y'all?
Cynthia?
I'm a little confused on the use of the words bad rap. Like it's not an insult to men. It's the power structure that has programmed to see them this way. You understand that, yeah?
I'm not sure. Okay, bad rap. Do the men here feel like that really sucks for men, that we're considered expendable in your personal feeling?
Well, I think from a military perspective, strategic perspective, men are definitely more expendable than women.
Why?
I mean, that's just, presuming that multiple men can, or that men can impregnate multiple women to, in order to have, continue the generation for the next cycle of warfare, then yeah, you can totally, that's, just looking at the way that, animal farming, the way that it works, they don't need you don't need as many males as you need females. You only need so many sperm donors. You need much more females to continue the population. So yeah, from that perspective, but obviously not from like a human rights perspective.
Is it something that you think about or deal with?
Well, I study, military strategy. It's always been a fascination of mine. It's something I think about, and again, and like I said, it has parallels in the animal meat and dairy industry. So
Okay, so here's where I'm coming from with this question. I think women feel very strongly and speak often about how much I would say they have a bad rap. Things really suck for women. And yet we can talk about things that sound like they'd really suck for men. But every time I ask a guy, are you upset with this? It seems like you're not. It's just a real mind blower for me.
So, question: what are you asking? That what is men upset about? I mean, what are men? I'm trying to understand.
Okay, so women are like, well, all these XYZ happens to us, and this needs to change. And I feel like, okay, you men, you could say, well, hey, you treat us like we're expendable, and I think that needs to change. But you guys don't. I'm shocked.
of course it needs to change, but I mean that, we're talking about shifting from a society that was mostly dependent on survival of the tribe to the continuation of the lineage, to actually having a modern society where everybody matters, type of thing. So those are, yeah, I mean, one perception was where the lineage matters, the continuation of the society. versus the happiness of the individuals. Those are two very different perspectives. And I mean, we come from, most of our history is based in that other perception. It's only the happiness of the individuals and the well-being of the individuals is a much more recent phenomenon. So you got to take that in context, that we were transitioning between these two types of perspectives.
Good point. Are you done?
Mm-hmm.
We have Hisham, and then we have Ramses, and then we have Cynthia.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I don't feel that men are expendable. I don't feel from society that men are expendable. Yeah. One example, because Cezary said, a man is responsible when it comes to creating offsprings in that sense, biologically. But wouldn't you say the same thing can happen in the opposite direction? Like I think biologically we're equal, and they are not expendable in the sense that when you have offsprings, the best who can really raise your offsprings are, the father and the mother. I think so. Like they have an emotional connection, and for that reason, I don't think they're expendable. You need them for the second generation to be raised properly, at least in my opinion. Yeah, I think that's my take on it right now.
I believe it's Ramses' turn now, and then Cynthia.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Shyam. Like, definitely, I think all of us know that men are not expendable. However, the society just treats them as if they were expendable, unconsciously. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. And the point that I want to make here is, guys, for as far as I understand the difference in psychological features of men versus women, men tend to be less expressive than women, and I guess we talked about this before. So whenever a man has a problem or feels that they are expendable or feels that they are not treated well, they are not going to talk about it. Even if you ask them, they will pretend as if they are okay, because they usually tend to keep their problems and their feelings for themselves. They never express their feelings except when it really becomes so complicated, and they just think about ending the relationship with someone. So I think this might answer Stacy's question. Of course, I might not be like 100% correct, but I'm pretty sure that all the men here in conversation, Tommy, Cezary, and Hisham, feel what I'm talking about.
Oh, go ahead, Cezary.
Who's next? Who's next?
Go ahead.
Me. And I didn't have a comment when I raised my hand. I was just trying to point you to Hisham, who had not spoken yet. But since I've been listening, my question, well, what I would say is, if you think that men should be dying while women are not dying, then you consider men to be expendable, in my opinion. If one can sacrifice their life, then the other should be able to sacrifice their life. I mean, that's the way I feel. But that's it. Next.
Cezary?
I think it depends. It all comes down to essentially market price. Under different circumstances, everything has a different price, a different value. Normally, water is free when you're at home, but water if you go out to a store, you you pay for it because it's bottled, so you have to pay for the costs of that for it actually being bottled and brought to the store. If you go to like a football game or something, there's a higher demand for that water. And then if you're like on I don't know, if water is really scarce and there's a limited supply of it, then the price goes up even higher. If you're in California, it's even higher because they have water shortages. So water is subject to that. I think people are subject to that too. Genders are subject to that. I think sexes are subject to that. I think age, based on a certain age, you could say that younger people are, or old people are more expendable than younger people under certain circumstances, because we're talking about who's going to go to war, but then there's another way of looking at this. Who's going to get the health benefits? Who's going to get the preferred treatment when it comes to some kind of health treatment, operations, and things like that? So old people tend to be more expendable. And our goal, I think our whole goal as a society and in trying to progress technologically is to create less and less circumstances to where our resources force us to value different people differently. Our goal is to actually make us more and more equal, but at the same time we keep discovering certain instances where we do run into those real those real situations where we are forced to make difficult decisions. But I mean, all of that is imposed on us by nature. I think as a species, different tribes, human tribes, learned to deal with that. Like I said, back in the day, women and children were more valuable. I mean, men went off to war because it would be harder to replace the other. It's a cost-benefit analysis, what it comes down to. And we're trying, through our technological progress, we're trying to prevent ourselves from having to make that cost-benefit analysis, but the numbers are still there. It's just we're trying to make them matter less and less and kind of treat people more equally. So we're just overcoming that, as our culture is catching up with our technology. Let's put it that way. I yield the floor.
Ramses, I want to thank you so much for bringing up the idea that men don't express their feelings. And it's kind of like been the undercurrent of all of my meetings. I haven't addressed it directly, but I feel that way very much, that men are not educated in feelings. They have their feelings excised. And so I wonder if we are really getting, I mean, I ask you guys how you feel about things, but I wonder if we're getting an actual reading of the reality when you're not really maybe educated in what you're feeling. And we have Ramses with her hand up next, and then Hisham. Feelings are weak. Okay.
Yeah, and here you go, Staci. Cezary has said it. In my opinion, guys, you are abused. Yeah, you guys are really abused. I don't know why when a boy grows up, they like brainwash the boy that they must be the stronger. They must hide their feelings. Other people shouldn't feel that they are weak, etc. And that's why you never hear a man really talking about his emotions, except as a psychiatrist or as a psychotherapist. So that's why I feel that our society really abuses men and puts them in a very tight corner where they cannot express for themselves. Also for the market price part. So of course I'm not as specialized in economy as Cezary, but if I remember correctly from school, the concept of a scarcity doesn't work without the concept of need, right? So if something is not needed, it doesn't matter whether it is scarce or not. that's why there are jobs that are needed, like a lot of vacancies, for example, in software engineering, but other jobs are not needed anymore today, compared to other times. So I guess this can apply to anything, but I have never seen that applying to genders or sexes. Like, what kind of job would require, for example, a third gender, but would not require a woman or a man or gender fluid or whatever? I have never seen that, to be honest, except for breastfeeding, for example. If your job is breastfeeding, then it might apply to a specific sex that is able to breastfeed. But for genders, when it comes to genders, I've never seen that.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have their hand up? If not, I would, well, we're getting towards 9 here. Do we want to get into a topic of men's feelings or save that for another time? I really want to dig into that one.
Well, you can dig into that with all the other women.
Huh? What do you
What
mean?
makes you think men are going to talk about it? That's the whole point, is that we don't.
I'm fighting an uphill battle. Cynthia, you're laughing. You gotta have something to say there.
Nope.
Hilarious.
Here, I'll give you a little bit of it away. Men don't communicate their feelings in order to protect their loved ones.
Okay, so where does this come from to protect your loved ones? You just born that way? You grow up in the wild and that's what you guys do? Or is this that you've been brought up that way?
No, it's natural. It's evolutionary. It's strategic.
Okay, so if you didn't have people telling you and demonstrating to you that men don't cry, feelings are weak, you would have no feelings anyway? You just stuff them because they're not useful?
No. Men have feelings. They just don't communicate them, because that would be to communicate what your weak points are. Why would you tell your enemy what your weak points are? That makes no sense.
Oh, I got to think about that one. I'm lost. I don't know how to answer that. Let's see. Ramses, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think by enemy, I think Cezary means competitor, not enemy, right? Because the original model of the evolution thing is that men compete on female resources, right? So maybe probably from subconscious level, men don't want to show their feelings so that they are still up to the competition. Not sure, really.
Okay, I still want to ask, is this a natural thing that you guys would do if you weren't brought up that way? And we have Cezary and I said yes. Hisham,
Yeah. Can I have a well, maybe this is a different perspective. I'm speaking from my point of view. I don't think having to hide my feelings, I just think I don't have that much things to complain about. Not, it's like I don't care. It's like yeah, I think many men, maybe because I'm projecting what I go through, I think maybe many men just are not, they just don't, care a lot about some issues that maybe I don't know, maybe women feel that they're important, but I think, you know, men emotionally, they just, you know, don't care. They focus on other things. Yeah.
Do you think that that is just biological, or do you think it's taught?
No, I think it's biological. Like we said, because I think how men are physically different than women, I think this is also something biological. Maybe society does work on this more, and maybe some societies in different cultures will abuse this biological difference by telling, hey, men are not allowed to cry. But I think men do cry, but maybe not as quickly or as fast as women. There are exceptions, of course, but yeah, in general, I think part of it is biologically, and sometimes society will abuse this difference.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. We have Ramses and then Tommy.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Sham. So part of it is biological, but the society abuses it. Also, when it comes to competition, usually everyone has qualities, okay? And in the Darwinian model, sometimes, you know, if in both sexes, the ones who have higher qualities to, you know, to breed the other and to continue as a generation is actually the ones whose competition is not a big deal for, either for a man or for a woman. So I think what happens here is because traditionally for centuries and for decades, we have been treating women as the one to be targeted, not the other way around. So the man goes to the woman and asks her for marriage, not the other way around. I think this is the reason why the competition is really harder for men. And now as a society has been even abusing this and putting a lot of pressure on men. Also, on the part that is related to that they don't care about their problems, I have noticed a very interesting phenomenon, which is escapism among a lot of men. Escapism. They tend to escape from their problems, you know, by going out and meeting with their friends, sitting in a cafe, smoking marijuana, you know, and they are just like, I want to escape from my problems. But women have different psychology. They keep thinking about each single problem they have. And usually they sit alone in their bedroom, just thinking about this and that. So women overthink, but men underthink. Maybe this contributes to the problem as well.
Very interesting. Thank you. Tommy, your turn.
Yeah, this is pretty complex. I was thinking about it. I still haven't fully thought it through yet. But yeah, so I never been around men that weren't expressive. You know, I mean, I've been around just delinquent men and women all my, you know, most of my younger life, you know, and still now even I don't understand where this comes from. I mean, I can see the factors of it, you know, men not being expressive, you know, due to their, you know, being their upbringing or something, and parents being, you know, overly protective or, you know, controlling and not listening to their kids. And so then the child doesn't feel like they're heard. And so then they hide their feelings, you know what I mean? But then also on the flip side, that can lead to outbursts of anger and the child, you know, being rebellious and expressing themselves more. But I've been around expressive men all my life, you know, and I grew up around women only, so that also gives me more of that expressive feelings type person, because that's, you know, that's all I knew, and being really expressive, you know, more in a balanced manner now than what it was a long time ago, when it was more violent and aggressive manner of expressing myself. but yeah, I don't know where that comes from. You know, I mean, it's different cultures, I guess, and different people groups. You know, because I've been around expressive men all my life who express their feelings without no shame, and they'll tell you how they feel.
So, Tommy, when you were brought up, did you hear men don't cry, or
That's a different thing though. Like expressing yourself and not crying, two different, you know, areas. You know what I mean? For like crying, I grew up believing it wasn't manly to, you know, to not cry. So then I would bottle up and hide it in. So if I was sad, you know, I would soak it up or whatever, or try to brush off the tears so they wouldn't show. You know what I mean? But I still would express myself without the tears though. You know what I mean? But later on in life, I learned that it was important to shed those tears to be able to really fully express myself. You know, it was a different level of expression. But I mean, but yeah, I grew up that way. I just to be clear, as a man growing up, I believed it was not to be offensive to Ramses or anything. You know, because I believe in, you know, respect of all beings. I'm a totally different person now, but when I grew up though, I believed it was gay just to have a best friend. You know what I mean? I believed it wasn't manly. I believed it wasn't
yes?
manly.
How did you get that? That is a really big point for me. Sorry to interrupt, but you know, the idea that having a male friend is gay. How can you tell me how you learned that?
Basically, um, I I think it probably rooted in not having a father. You know what I mean? So it could have been started there, you know, but having just a close relationship with a male, you know, was too much. You know what I mean? And me growing up, I grew up as not loving anyone. You know what I mean? You weren't supposed to love. You're supposed to not be that way. You know what I mean? That was weakness to love. It was weakness to have a best friend. You know what I mean? It was just didn't have that close relationship. So, you know, I was just that was just the brainwash of you know, and it was reinforced by not having a father, which would have been a close relationship with the male, and then having a weak relationship with the mother, you know, that was very violent. um you know, it just led to that type of thing. I'm not having a close relationship with anybody. You know what I mean? It was just a that I was it wasn't supposed to be about, you know, anything like that, because I was against love.
So did anybody say, "Oh man, that's gay"?
About which part?
Like anything that made you think, "Oh, I better I better not do anything like emotional or feminine or anything because I'm going to get called gay."
Oh yeah, all the time. That's how all the basically whatever you want to call them, troublemakers, you know, that's how they thought. You know what I mean? People who were bullies, that's how they thought. You know, people who were violent in gangs, you know, I was around the dumb crowds. You know what I mean? It was gay to do any of that stuff. You know what I mean? It was you know, it was weakness.
All right, thank you so much. Hisham, you have your hand up?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just to point out that the way Tommy expressed it, like because I come from a different culture, we never have this kind of approach to it. Like when I was, when I was young, in the school, middle school, high school, that idea of having a guy friend is gay, or even expressing your emotions to a guy friend in a sense um, um, that there is a closeness. So I would like just to point out, and this is something to me interesting, that maybe it is exclusive to Western or American culture, maybe, but from my culture at least, we never experienced something to have a guy friend is gay, or to express your emotions is gay, even though the culture where I come from is very man-dominated, very conservative. But it's interesting how, you know, these ideas are different.
Well, thank goodness that there's some place that they're not doing that to young men. Glad to hear that. Ramses, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Hisham, maybe the thing about having a bestie might be gay. Maybe this is a cultural thing, and also like, you know, maybe when you grow up, it also depends on your relationship with your parents, your father, your mother. So if you don't have a father, you might have specific perceptions, etc. However, I'm pretty sure that in all cultures, there are a lot of things that are considered gay, even if they are not, and men or males are forced not to do them in order not to be perceived as gay, not just having a bestie. And what I'm happy about now is that we managed to get you to talk, guys. And yeah, we want you to talk more, because definitely this is very sad to hear. And I'm really sorry about that, Tommy. And I'm really sorry for every single male who had to face or has to face such kind of silly situations. That's why we really need to talk and express our feelings so that we can eliminate all these society diseases.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ramses. Cynthia, you've been sitting over there looking very thoughtful. You don't have anything to say on males' emotions and all that?
I was actually sitting here debating if I wanted to share my personal experience. Here, because I went through like a 20-year period where I had very much the same perception. I worked in male-dominated fields, and the idea was, you know, if you cried, you were made fun of and ostracized because that was weak, that was bad. And I got to a point where I just didn't really feel anything anymore. And I gotta tell you, that's not a good place to be. It's not a good place to be emotionally, mentally, or physically. Like I was essentially just existing to run into the next thing, get hurt, and ignore it, and put it back for forgetting. And it's not healthy. It's just not healthy. But that is just my personal experience. So, you know, take it for what it's worth.
Then how did you get back to not feeling that way? Was it easy to get back, or did you have to like retrain yourself?
Oh my God, no at all. Oh no, it's terrible. I mentioned this before. It's like running into electric fence over and over and over again, just because it feels so good when you regain consciousness. Like you have to eventually process and deal with all of that stuff. Like stuff you don't even realize affected you in any way, shape, or form. Like it all just comes up in this big bleh. And I spent 9 months crying my eye, probably the most I'd cried in 25, 30 years. And I felt better for having done it. And to speak to Cezary's point about it being a weakness, I would say it takes a far stronger person to show emotion in the face of those that they know are going to see it as weakness than it does to do what they want you to do. That's just my thinking on it. So.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That was an extremely valuable perspective. Thank you very much. Daniel, you had some very, very interesting comments in the chat, and I am very, very surprised at your feelings about men and feelings. So would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Wow, what a great conversation. There's so much to go over. I mean, I remember, I was lucky. I grew up in a intact family with a loving mother and father. Heck, my dad was, Purple Heart, Battle of the Bulge, wounded, World War II veteran. And he barely pulled through from a very devastating, mortar round wound. I mean, he lost 80% of his intestines. But yeah, I mean, I think I kind of got a hint of that. It was gay to have a best friend, but you know, I think there was this culture of like you were either a jock or a stoner or maybe a nerd. You know, there were like three choices. You know, in the stupid culture we call public school. You know, in America, and that would be a great thing to just like somehow circumvent. I don't know how that happens, but what comment in particular were you thinking of having me discourse about, Staci?
I was surprised that you were saying yes. You agree with society that men biologically don't have feelings because you don't show them, or something for the benefit of the tribe, protection of the tribe.
Oh yeah, there's no upside to revealing emotional deep feelings, because that just clues in your enemy as to how they can better, you know, wage an attack on your tribe and your young people. So yeah, men, I think, are evolutionarily conditioned, you know, not to be forthcoming with their inner dialogue, because it could be used against you. It's a national security issue. It's just like, you know, we have the National Security Act. It basically says anything that's helps the national security, it's okay to do. You know, that was the 1947 National Security Act. I mean, it's really it was basically a coup d'etat by the CIA. I mean, it's really scary if you think about what we kind of lost the American experiment with the National Security Act, because we just created this rogue shadow government that could do anything it thinks is going to be important, you know, for protecting the tribe, which is, you know, oligarchical, corporatist, capitalist classes. Someone else could talk. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I see Ramses has a hand up, and then Hisham.
That was an old one. I have already used that.
Okay, Hisham.
Yeah. When it comes to men hiding their feelings, maybe we should determine what do we mean. I mean, I know that if men are happy, they'll express their happiness. And I know, for example, if my father is angry, he will express his anger if he saw something upsetting. You know, so when we say they hide their feelings, I think we need to determine what kind of feelings. I'm sure it's not happiness, not anger, not disgust, not feeling proud. Maybe we're just talking about sadness. And yeah, that's the point I was referring to. And when we talk about sadness, well, sadness about what? What are the things that will make a grown-up man, sad? His team losing, his football team losing? I'm sure a lot of men will express, oh, I'm just frustrated that, I don't know, the soccer team lost, you know? So then what kind of sadness? Is it sadness related to children? Is it sadness related to wife, uncle? Yeah, so I think we need to determine it more. Okay, that's it.
Well, I would like to say, I wonder if men actually know what they're feeling. Tommy?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, I always know what I'm feeling. I just got to be careful on how I express it.
Have you run into men that you are like, dude, you're totally disregarding something? Since you are in touch with your feelings, have you noticed men who are not?
I mean, I guess it depends on what feelings they're expressing. I think it's more that the men that are not in touch with their feelings that I have seen is just the ones who don't feel like they need to express sympathy or empathy or care for somebody or concern or I don't know, just like the more, I guess, what they call feminine. But
Really, really good point. Thank you. Ramses, your hand is up.
So I think I have a good example for feelings that men wouldn't like to express. One prominent example is falling in love. What brought us to this conversation was talking about maternal and paternal leaves, the stress that the society puts on men, etc. So there are a lot of complications when it comes to men and women living together and taking responsibility of the whole family. You know, there are a lot of feelings involved in that. So even before they made the family, even before that, it all starts when the man falls in love with a woman. They kind of feel like, you know, nobody should know about that. They never express it, maybe only special cases. And I have noticed that with a lot of my straight friends, you know, like it's very difficult for them to express their emotions. And usually when I am in a relationship, I'm always the one who tries to ask questions in order to let the other party express their feelings. You know, maybe Stacy, maybe for sure that they don't know their feelings because they don't think so much about it, like women. So probably they don't know how to express it. But if they just give themselves 5 or 10 minutes, they will know exactly the problem. They will know what they feel and they know what makes them feel uncomfortable or sad or whatever. So I think for like here, Daniel has said very nice word. Big boys don't cry. We really need to get rid of all these kind of stuff that you tell children when they grow up. The mess of public schools. Public schools should be more controlled. Teachers should talk about this stuff starting from very young ages.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Thank you. Hisham, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I would like to expand more on Ramses' point. Maybe, yeah, the feeling of love, you know, in some cultures, I think I've read about it in some cultures, when it comes to love, maybe for men, it's easy for them to express love to their parents, for the mother and the father. It's easy for them to express love to their children. But maybe when it comes to their partner, you know, and I'm talking about male ex female, to express a man expressing his love to his wife, maybe in some cultures where you will see that it will not be expressed openly, like, and in fact I read in Japanese culture, there is a word for love, it's called shitaru or whatever. It said like it's rarely used, and maybe this is my assumption, maybe it's related to the power struggle that a man will find himself in his household. Maybe a man will feel expressing his love to his wife is a form of weakness, and he wants to be respected, and he wants to have the dominance over the house, and this what maybe pushes him not to express this feeling. And of course society will play into it, but yeah, I'm trying to think where and when men hide their feelings, and the only feelings that I can come up with is maybe sadness or love, like somewhere between pain and love, like, and it's related to, and why it's related to what it's related to, I think, the power struggle, that in a household the man, he wants to feel respected, and he wants to feel that he has the dominance and the decision. Of course this is for historical reasons. So yeah, maybe this is related to your question.
Fabulous. Thank you very, very much. That has definitely enlightened me in a way that I can say, man, you guys are right. It is so related to that part of expression. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
I was gonna say the power struggle, and also the not seen as masculine. It's feminine, so they want to be seen as feminine.
Oh, what a good point. What is feminine? What is masculine? Oh, we've got to do this again. Are you guys open to having this conversation again?
Sure.
Not so much.
Yeah, I think it's a really good conversation.
These
Yeah,
are my
I'd like-
this is my normal discussion.
Oh, cool. Well, I would like to think about this some more, because it's just, to me, it's just hitting the tip of the iceberg, and I've learned so much. That thank you guys so much for allowing me to get here. This is the 5th meeting, and wow, this is where I wanted to go.
Yeah, this is stuff that I wouldn't even have thought of if you hadn't brought it up, probably.
Wow. Well, did anybody have any comments about the Thunderdome format, or any ideas for next time? Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the first hot tomato. That's it.
Well, you know, I shouldn't have said don't make it provocative. Next time we'll have to be more provocative, so we get a little bit more emotions, and then we can call a hot tomato.
I would say, plunge right into the hot tomato format. And you know what? Not just have a judge, but have like a full audience critique. Like in Toastmasters, everyone gives a critique of the speaker. There's not like one judge, So I think looking at the Toastmasters format. But yeah, I would say, capture that hot debato, energy right at the start, because otherwise you're kind of letting it diffuse, Sometimes people log in and they want to just like get right to their emotional output sector.
Well,
So
I welcome you to help me grab that when you see it, because my mind gets a little bit distracted. So anybody, if you see an opportunity where 2 people are kind of like, well, you or this, yeah, hot tomato, we gotta try that.
there's some like small town radio stations where they have like a program called, swap meet of the air or flea market of the air, and everyone gets to like just have like 30 seconds to say they have a tractor for sale, or just to like vent. I was like, but it's rapid fire. It's like 30 seconds. Okay, next caller. That would be a fun format.
A 30-second flash comment, or
Yeah,
what do you-
yeah. Just so you don't lose that high intensity energy, Because once you start like saying, all the opening remarks and introductions and rules and blah blah blah, you might have lost like half the people at that point.
So then start out of the gate after all of the reading with, okay, 30-second flash comment on this subject, kind of thing, on a subject, or?
Yeah, just let people like vent, for a limited time period. But it's like, maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds or something. But, you'd be surprised at what people can, come up with in like a quick rapid fire burst of energy.
Okay, I love this. I like that idea a lot. So what would you say? Would you say, hey, let's do our 30-second daily venting?
Yeah, kind of like a round table free-for-all, something, just like limited, to, and just cut them off, be disciplined. It's like, okay, your time's up, don't let them,
Okay.
be disciplined.
Cynthia's looking pretty happy there.
The airing of grievances.
There you go. That's what this country was founded on.
It's what Festivus was founded on.
I love it, Daniel. Thank you.
Rantivus for the rest of us. I'm gonna mute.
Awesome. Well, guys, do we want to wrap it up here? Do we want to do final last comments? Cezary, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the format because I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of an echo here. Because I think for a podcast, if we're speaking for an hour, which I think we should be, because I think we do want people to listen to it. It's not so much about new people joining. It's about us who know each other and already have developed a respect for one another. It's about us actually communicating some deep ideas very quickly, because that's really what keeps a podcast entertaining. If there's too much formality, then people don't want to listen to that. So I think we should worry about the formality a lot less and actually keep it down to a minimum. Maybe the introduction, maybe it should be like only 30 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds, and then get into the discussion very quickly. Kind of like, essentially, I think this the second hour discussion that we did, the second recording, I think was just in general actually just better than the first one. It was more free flowing, and that's the thing, is like we also develop our own rhythm, you know, and we can see. I think we should be focusing on recording audio, but I think we should be using the video to help us coordinate how we communicate, so that we're not like cutting each other off, and you know, we can raise hands without, we don't have to necessarily even mention, or well, I guess we could use the buttons to raise hands. By the way, I did realize that with this reaction button, even the hosts and co-hosts can now raise their hand, because before that was an issue. So now, you know, we can all raise hands just like this. So point is I think we can save a lot of time, which will make it much more dense, much more efficient. And I think we should just depend on our own internal dynamic than on formality to make it more appealing to other people.
So are you saying don't do reading of the opening minutes, don't do the demonstration of Egora?
I mean, we should probably mention some of that like very quickly, or maybe the opening notes should only be like, I don't know, like just a few key concepts, you know, something that can be said within about 20, 30 seconds. Just, you know, like the short form of the opening notes, you know.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you so much.
And also, and a lot of that stuff can be said at the end. We can say a lot of this stuff at the tail end, you know, like we can have like a wrap up, like the last 5 minutes can be, oh, by the way, you can find us here. This is, you know, have like a thing to prepare people for next time. And then this way, so we can kind of jump into it. I mean, that this is looking at the
recording so that we can actually use that last half and then discuss the format off record.
Sure.